The principal's office was filled with tension as Yuna, Teo, Chisom, Haeun, Yumi, Sooyoung, and Minji stood before the principal's desk. The atmosphere was heavy, and the only sound in the room was the ticking of the wall clock. The principal adjusted his glasses, his gaze scanning the students. I was informed there was an incident in the dressing room. I expect an explanation. Yumi let out a small, amused laugh. If you mean Yuna attacking me, then yes, it happened. The principal turned to Yuna. Is that true? Yuna's tone remained steady. I pushed her. But she deserved it after what she did to Chisom's form. Yumi scoffed. That's a serious accusation. Yuna didn't hesitate. You said it yourself, Yumi. You even claimed you should have done more. Yumi raised an eyebrow. Do you have any proof? The principal turned to Haeun, Chisom, and Teo. Do you believe Yumi and her friends were responsible for the torn form? Chisom, her voice calm but firm, simply said, yes. Teo spoke next. We have no solid proof, but yes, I do. Haeun nodded. I believe they did it. But belief isn't evidence, Yumi said with a loud voice. The principal's voice was firm. So, Yumi, are you saying you had no involvement in Chisom's missing form? Yumi shrugged. I don't know what happened to it. The principal sighed. Without proof, I can't take disciplinary action. However, Yuna, physical aggression is unacceptable. Yuna nodded. I'll accept the consequences. The principal continued. If I find out the truth, there will be consequences for the guilty party. As for Yuna, you will receive an appropriate punishment for your actions. Yuna didn't argue. She simply nodded. A knock suddenly came at the door. The secretary stepped in, holding a letter. Sir, Star Entertainment has sent an official request for Chisom to go on a short leave for her scheduled work and meetings. The principal barely glanced at it before shaking his head. Denied. She has a case in school and cannot leave until it is resolved. Chisom felt her stomach tighten, but she knew arguing wouldn't help. That's all for now. You're dismissed. The principal said to the students. As soon as the words left his mouth, Chisom hurried out of the office and her friends rushed after her. Chisom walked briskly down the hallway, her emotions swirling. The principal's rejection of the agency's request and the unresolved issue with Yumi weighed heavily on her. Chisom, Teo called out as he hurried after her. She didn't slow down immediately, but he reached her side anyway. You shouldn't let this get to you, he said. The case isn't over yet. Chisom exhaled, shaking her head. That's easy for you to say. Yumi always gets away with things like this. Not this time, Teo assured her. We'll make sure the truth comes out. And what about the agency? Chisom asked. The school dismissed it like it didn't matter. That was unfair, Teo admitted. They should at least consider how important this is for you. Teo studied her for a moment before offering. How about we go see a movie tonight? You need a break from all this. Chisom let out a tired laugh. A movie? You think that's going to fix everything? No, he said, but it'll help. Chisom hesitated, then sighed. I don't know. Come on, Teo pressed. No overthinking, just a movie. After a pause, she finally muttered, fine. Deal, Teo said as he gave Chisom one last glance before turning to leave. As he walked away, Haeun stepped closer to Chisom, her voice soft with concern. Chisom, why is it always you? She asked, her eyes filled with worry. Chisom looked down, feeling the weight of everything pressing on her. I don't know, Haeun. I really don't. From the side, Yuna spoke. Don't let this get to you. Yumi isn't worth it. And don't worry about me either. Chisom murmured. But Yuna. No buts, Yuna cut in. I knew what I was doing. Besides, I'll be fine. And we'll be there to assist you with whatever punishment they give you, Haeun said. Chisom managed a small smile, touched by their support. With that, the three of them walked out of the school together, heading home. Chisom stepped out of her neighborhood, where Teo was already waiting. The moment he saw her, he scanned her outfit. You look good, he said casually. She looked at him. Oh, thanks. I almost thought you wouldn't come, Teo said. You invited me, she replied simply. Still, I wasn't sure you'd actually show up. Are we going or not? She asked. Without another word, they walked side by side to the cinema. In the cinema, they settled into their seats as the movie began. For a while, They watched in silence, both immersed in the story. Teo leaned slightly toward her. Not bad, right? Chisom kept her eyes on the screen. It's better than I expected. Told you I have good taste. She looked at him briefly. You got lucky this time. They continued watching, occasionally exchanging glances at intense or funny moments. By the time the movie ended, the atmosphere between them had noticeably relaxed. As they left the cinema, a cool breeze blew past them. The streets were buzzing with activity, and the distant sound of traffic filled the air. That was interesting, Chisom said. Teo looked at her. Yeah. Did you enjoy it? It was good, different from what I expected. For a while, they walked in silence before Teo spoke again. Tell me about your family. Chisom took a moment before answering. My dad has been sick for some time now. I try to send money home whenever I can. Teo listened carefully. And your mom? Chisom's voice softened. She passed away years ago. I'm sorry, Teo said, his tone sincere. Chisom offered a small smile. It's all right. After a moment, she added, I have a stepmom, though, but she's more into money than anything else. Teo exhaled. That sounds rough. Chisom let out a light laugh. Yeah, but let's not make the night about her. Teo looked ahead. I'd like to visit Nigeria someday. To see more beautiful things and beautiful people like you. Chisom raised a brow, amused. People, huh? So I'm part of the sightseeing package. Teo gave a small smile. Maybe the highlight. Chisom shook her head playfully. Hope you're ready to struggle for a seat in a bus. We don't do gentlemen first, over there. So far as I get to eat jollof rice, it's worth the struggle. Teo said. Chisom burst into laughter. They laughed together as they headed home. As soon as Chisom got home, her phone rang. She checked the screen. Sunji, she answered immediately. Hey, his voice came through. How are you holding up? I don't even know. Today was a mess, Chisom replied. I heard, Sunji said. The form issue. The principal rejecting your leave. I figured you'd be frustrated. Frustrated is an understatement, Chisom answered. It's like everything is working against me. Hey, don't think like that, Sunji said. I'll be back soon, and we'll sort it out. You can still attend some meetings from home in the meantime. We'll find another way, he assured her. Just wait for me, Chisom paused but then remembered. Enough about me, how's your show going? Sunji let out a short laugh. Tiring, but good, the crowd has been amazing. I wish you could see it, maybe one day, Chisom replied with a small smile. One day for sure, Sunji said. Now, get some rest, I'll see you soon. Alright, Chisom answered. Just don't keep me waiting too long. The weekend was over, and a new school week had begun. As usual, Hyun and Chisom left early for school. A little while later, Jansu arrived at Hyun's house, expecting to meet them. When Mrs. Kim opened the door, she smiled. Good morning, Jansu. You just missed them. They already left for school. Jansu nodded, shifting on his feet. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something important. Mrs. Kim's expression turned curious. What is it? It's about what's been happening in school with Chisom and Hyun. Jansu answered. Mrs. Kim's face showed surprise. What do you mean? There's been a lot going on. Chisom keeps getting into trouble, and honestly, I don't feel comfortable with her. And Hyun, she's changed a lot too, Jansu said. Mrs. Kim listened carefully. I didn't know they were getting into problems, she admitted. I just thought you should know, Jansu said. I don't want Hyun getting dragged into problems. Mrs. Kim gave him a grateful nod. Thank you for telling me, Jansu. I'll talk to them about it. With that, Jansu left for school, leaving Mrs. Kim deep in thought. Chisom and Teo stood in the hallway, casually talking while waiting for Yuna, who had gone to answer the principal's call. Hyun was also away, leaving just the two of them. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Sunji strolled toward them, hands tucked into his pockets, eyes scanning the two before stopping a few feet away. Well, he said, his voice laced with amusement. I leave for a few days, and suddenly, everything's a mess. Teo turned to him. What's that supposed to mean? Sunji met his gaze, his tone turning sharper. It means you couldn't even protect a foreigner who, at that moment, was dependent on you while I was away. Teo's smile faded. Protect, he repeated. Didn't know Chisom needed a bodyguard. Not a bodyguard, just someone capable, Sunji replied. Before Teo could respond, Chisom suddenly cut in, seriously, glaring at both of them. I already have enough to deal with, and now you two want to add to my problems. Neither of them said a word. Chisom shook her head, exhaling in frustration. I don't have time for this, she muttered before walking away, leaving both Teo and Sunji standing there. After school, Yuna began her punishment in the science lab. Chisom and Haeyeon, unwilling to let their friend suffer alone, stayed behind to help her. They dusted the shelves, arranged the equipment, and mopped the floor. The work was tiring, but together, they managed to get through it. As the sun began to set, they finished cleaning and packed up, ready to leave. Yuna stretched her arms. Finally, we're done. Chisom dusted off her hands. Let's get out of here. Haeyeon reached for the door handle and twisted it. It didn't budge. She tried again. Wait. Why isn't it opening? Yuna stepped forward and pulled at the door. Is it stuck? Chisom's brows furrowed. No, this door was working fine earlier. They exchanged glances before realization dawned on them. Someone locked us in, Haeyeon muttered. Meanwhile, a few moments earlier, Yumi and her friends had gathered near a nearby lab, keeping an eye on their targets. Yumi said, they really think there's something, don't they? Soo-young tapped her fingers on the table. I say we give them a little inconvenience. Minji glanced at her. Like what? Soo-young leaned in. Let's lock them in. Yumi's lips curled into a grin. Brilliant. They hurried over to the lab door while making sure no one was watching. Soo-young quickly manipulated the lock, securing it from the outside. That should do it, she whispered. Yumi flipped her hair and turned to leave. Let's go before. Wait, Minji interrupted. Are you sure they won't get out? Soo-young smirked. Not unless they suddenly develop super strength. Satisfied, they walked off without realizing that, in her haste, Yumi's glittery hairpin slipped from her hair and fell to the ground near the door. Back in the lab, frustration grew. What do we do now? Yuna asked, pressing her forehead against the door. Wait for someone to come, Haeyeon said. Chisom pulled out her phone. No signal. Minutes passed, and just when they were losing hope, footsteps approached. It was Teo. He had been looking for them after noticing they hadn't left the school yet. When he reached the lab, he noticed their faint voices and he tried the door. It wouldn't open. Why is this locked? Teo muttered. We don't know. Someone locked us in, Haeyeon called from inside. Without hesitation, Teo worked on unlocking the door and finally managed to get it open. The girls hurried out, relieved. Thank goodness, Chisom breathed. But Teo wasn't looking at them. His gaze was fixed on something on the floor. He bent down and picked up a glittery hairpin. Yumi's hairpin. His eyes darkened slightly as he examined it. I think I know who did this.